Hi, could you please introduce yourself and maybe share a bit about your background, including your work and advocacies?
Hi, so I'm Ella Robles. I am the Communication and Audience Engagement Manager at Puma Podcast. Puma Podcast is an audio production company that specializes in, as you may have guessed, podcasts. We have about 50 titles under our belt, all produced in-house, written, researched, edited, and published under Puma Podcast's name, though we do have some client work in there as well. And I started here. I'm on my third year at Small Podcast. But before that, in college, I studied communication and I had a special interest in radio production. I was part of the campus radio organization in college, which I guess like explains pretty much like the pipeline of going from campus radio to podcasting.
So what,
Um, I
sorry.
I had like I was very interested in joining Puma podcast because I went through my fourth year of college during the pandemic, and during like thesis season I didn't want to get into like um shows like the TV shows, Netflix, mga ganyan, or I didn't want to indulge in like the latest K-pop albums because it would distract me. But I've always been interested in podcasts. So discovering that there are Filipino uh podcast companies out there that are doing not doing podcasts na hindi siya yung one-on-one talk. It's not hot mic. They're documentary style podcasts that was super interesting to me. One of the first shows from Puma Podcast that I discovered was TED Talks, where human rights lawyer attorney Ted Te would come in and explain like bakit tinatawag na terorista yung mga aktivista dito sa Pilipinas, and he'll go into the law about things like that. So when I found out that they were hiring, wala nang break. After college, I applied and then I got the job. And now 3 years later, I'm here. And apart from doing social media, I'm also now organizing listener events, which I find very meaningful. Finding people who share the same advocacies that we do and find meaning and like a lot of value in the work that we do.
Yes, I do remember you were really fantastic when we were in college and you were regularly on air every other day and that was really
Thank
cool.
you.
And but considering that you've been doing this since college, like what was what was it about radio production per se that first drew you in when you just even before you started doing radio work in college, and how has your perspective on radio or podcasting changed since then?
So my love of radio, it didn't start in college. It didn't start in high school. Then it was something that for me, I'm batang 90s. When I was in grade school, siguro in the 2005 mga ganyan, I remember like wala pa kasing streaming, like on-demand streaming noon, wala pang Spotify. So like my companion, when I would start the day, I would wake up at 5 o'clock. I would get ready for school. Ang companion ko na dyan is like Monster RX 93.1. And, it's very one-sided. You're just really listening to this person who's basically on graveyard shift, talking to themselves and playing music. And I found it very interesting that even if wala silang kausap, na may power sila to connect with people, and the people who are listening, they tune in every day. 'Di ba? Parang before naman bihira kang makakita ng tao na will change stations very frequently. Like unless you're in the car, 'di ba, and you don't like the song that they're playing. May loyalty talaga sila to their favorite stations, to their favorite DJs. And in a way, you're building a relationship with someone that you don't really know. You don't get to talk to them. This was pre-social media as well. And that habit just continued into high school. And like I still remember the name of my favorite DJ, a monster, si DJ Alvin. And I think that he was one of the first people that really influenced me to to practice my craft in like talking and not just talking but listening. So when I had the opportunity, by the time I got to college, I took a few years off. Nag-UPOU rin ako. But when I got to college, nasa age na tayo of Spotify, ganyan. And I was getting real tired of listening to the same songs over and over again. So I discovered podcasting. Um, and again, even though I was listening to audio fiction, or I was listening to the news, or listening to people talking to each other hot mic, it still gave me that same feeling of may connection ako. I'm listening to a conversation. It doesn't include me. They're not talking to me, but I feel like I'm in the room with them. And having that connection was really important to me. And that's why I did college radio, because I wanted to be that for someone. I wanted to be like their imaginary friend. I wanted to be able to make an impact on their lives even without knowing them personally. And that's still the reason why I joined Puma Podcast in the first place.
Yeah, I do agree that that's really how it feels when you're in a radio show. I mean, listening to a radio show or a podcast. It feels like you're the third wheel or third person. I do remember that Monster was a big thing back then. I mean, I think a lot of people our age still remember it really well. So, I understand that throughout your career, you've advocated for various causes since Puma Podcast is very journalistic centered, I'd say. So how would you and I know that you've also been like a lifelong feminist. I know that so well. But so how would you describe your approach to gender equality and women's rights, and how has that shaped the work you do, particularly with Puma Podcast?
So, Puma Podcast was founded by journalists. The first shows that they produce, and like one of our flagship shows at Puma Podcast is called Teka Teka. It's 3 times a week. It used to be 5 times a week. A news program. It's basically a news magazine covering different topics. But apart from that, I think I did mention that we have more than like about 50 shows. Puma Podcast has always been like an avenue for our creators, our producers to express their advocacy in particular. And when I signed on, one of the first things they asked me is like, what are you passionate about? So for me personally, that's disability rights and feminism. And saktong sakto, one of our other flagship shows dito sa Puma Podcast, it's called Go Hard Girls. And Go Hard Girls is a sports show. It's a sports show about underrated Filipina athletes. Now, like I said, I'm an advocate for disability rights. I'm disabled myself. I am not sporty. I don't watch sports. I don't like if you ask me to name a Pinoy basketball player, I don't know. I don't know. Right? So to meet this woman, Siege Santenko, who is so passionate about turning the spotlight to underrated Filipina athletes. Parang as it is, Filipino athletes do not get a lot of attention unless you're a basketball player, diba? Parang hindi sila nababalita. What more if you're a woman, right? Women athletes from the Philippines are constantly bringing home medals. They are doing better than their male counterparts. Sorry, Gilas. And um, you don't hear about it, right? You don't come up to a male basketball fan and ask them who their favorite basketball player. They're not gonna say Jack Animam. They're not gonna say Aliana Lim, ganyan. So for me to meet another woman who is so passionate, right, about bringing these stories to the spotlight, and ang dami kong natutunan sa kanya on why it's important. I don't care about sports. I did not care about sports when I joined, and it was very challenging for me to do my job in promoting these episodes because I don't know anything about them. But now 3 years in, the show is 5 years old. I'm 3 years into working with it, and seeing how it has impacted not just the community but the athletes that we're featuring, right? Ang lakas ng tama niya sa akin. Something that I've learned over the course of my work here at Puma Podcast is other podcasts will have thousands and thousands of listeners. But for us, if we have 100 listeners, if we have 5 listeners, and they stay to the end, and it and it matters to them and they come out of it like nakinig ako at tumagos sa puso ko. That's something super important. So one of the things that we're super proud of is before Nesty Patesha, the boxer, before she went to the Olympics, in interview siya on Go Hard Girls, right? And this was like a biopic, no, not a biopic, a bio podcast about her. And kwento niya na as a young girl in what is it, Davao, I think. She was the only girl in her weight class. She was the only girl boxer. They put her up against an older man, a bigger older man, and this guy said, "Papatayin kita," and she beat him. And the very next day, she got recruited to the national team. Before she went to the Olympics, nobody knew who Nesty Petesha was. There were no articles about her. So because Go Hard Girls told her story, the Olympics website quoted Go Hard Girls.
That's amazing. Like, yeah, I'm not a very big sports fan myself, but I do agree that, the Philippines in particular, we have so much potential and great athletes and non-basketball sports that we're more likely to excel at given our build and everything. But yeah, I think that we have a long way to go, but especially thanks for sharing about these experiences of women athletes, because it's absolutely true. I have seen it, especially with all the things that happens with the Olympics. And now women's volleyball is a big thing, and I think that's like a nice step towards that. But yeah, thanks for sharing your insights. And yeah, I do agree that Go Hard Girls is really it's really a somewhat like a pioneer show, I would say.
It was
Yeah.
the first podcast in the Philippines that focuses solely on female athletes, and it is still the only show in the Philippines that focuses on Filipina athletes in particular. So parang I obviously like we wish there were more people who are getting on these amazing women, 'di ba? Parang I wish there were more people telling their stories, but it's such a huge honor to be the first.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can only imagine how much these young athletes feel when they listen to your episodes for the first time. So, given that we already know that there's a limited number of women-focused radio shows and podcasts in the country, what kind of impact do you hope to see these platforms have, and what do you think needs to change for that to happen? Because I think with the recent with the recent release of Spotify Wrapped and everyone's sharing their favorite, their top podcasts of the year, it's becoming even more popular year by year, I would say. So what do you have to say about that?
I think in every form that media takes, I think there should always be more room for women telling stories about womanhood. I am so glad to be seeing a lot of women podcasters taking up space in the medium. I know the Fabregas sisters have a very popular podcast, about their lives. One of them is married with a kid, one of them is still single. I know like Sab Magalona Bacaro is making huge impact in the podcasting space as well. And I want like there are so many other amazing Filipino podcasters that are doing great work in not just telling their own story but amplifying that of others. I think the real challenge is getting people outside of our own bubbles to listen, to give it a chance and to listen. Because for me, what I found, the Go Hard Girls community is so supportive of one another. Um, we held our first community event last year. Ang daming dumating. We didn't expect so many people to come. One of them, she got into a minor car accident on the way to the venue, and then she called me up. She called me up. She's like, susunod pa ako, susunod pa ako. Like, na-aksidente lang ako ng konti, pero okay lang, dadating ako. She came like an hour late. There was only like couple of minutes left until the program proper ends. But she showed up. She showed up with like a dent in her car because she really wanted to be there for people who were there for her. And that's Aliana Lim. And if you don't know who she is the first Filipina basketball player to Filipino ever, man or woman, to play as an export. She
Wow.
played in other countries. She didn't have a dime to her name. Nobody knew who she was, but she was playing for all these other countries.
That's I love the dedication to
I
that.
love that, like, I know this now because of podcasts
Yeah, I
like
didn't
what
know
we
this
do
either, but
ourselves, right?
yeah. Yeah, this is amazing. Like, I understand that Go Hard Girls is having an event this
Yes.
weekend, and I'm very excited to be part of that. And you're absolutely right that we really need more mainstream media can have a little more space for stories of actual womanhood, girlhood, all that stuff because living in a patriarchic country, I think we need to tell these stories more. So the reason why I invited you to this interview is because for one of my classes, I'm working on conceptualizing a radio show aimed at Filipinas, which covers topics like women's health, personal stories, parenting, career advice, and even legal rights. So,
Right.
it's like an everything under the sun type of thing for women because there's so much to talk about, I think. So, what
And
do you
there's a
think?
huge gap in the market for it,
Yeah.
really.
And what do you think are key factors to making a show like an ambitious show, I would say, like this one connect with its intended audience because I think my intended audience is women, girls from all walks of life, like you like and you know stay at home moms, all that stuff. Anyone who listens to radio basically, like women of all ages. So I think it's a very I admit it's a kind of like an ambitious goal, but what do you think could be done to make these types of shows accessible or approachable to these people?
I think, based off of my observations about the platforms, something that will really help in terms of accessibility is being available on more platforms. So we have a program with Youth Led. They're a civic education organization. We have several programs with them, and one of their target demographics is public school teachers. So we make these podcasts for them. It's about good governance. It's about parang history ng mga batas natin, mga inspiring youth leaders, in the hopes that these Civica teachers in particular will use these as resources in their classes. So last year I had the pleasure of being at at Youth Led Civic Education Program Summit, Civic Education Summit, where we were able to meet with teachers and discuss this with them. And the thing about this is, 'di ba parang ang pro natin lagi sa podcasts is it's on demand. You can listen to it whenever you have the free time to. As opposed to sa radio program, it's live. You have to really make time for it. If, for example, the time slot of your radio show is what, 3 to 5, 3 to 6, and you're not free at that time, sorry ka, right? So having this program be available um, on radio for people who don't have access to internet, to podcasting. They don't know what podcasting is, or wala silang data to consume it, to be able to consume it on Facebook or YouTube. Having that on broadcast, live broadcast is great. But also parang not limiting yourselves to the podcast platforms as well. So when I talk to these teachers, right? Ano ba yung podcast na yan? That's a problem, right? Not everybody knows what a podcast is. Saan ko ba yan mapapakinggan? Spotify. Ah, wala akong Spotify. Right? It costs money. It costs money to be on Spotify. Nasa YouTube ba kayo? Kasi yan ang gusto ng mga bata. Gusto nilang manood sa YouTube. So multi-platform accessibility is something that's really important if you want to extend your reach towards um, different social classes. Another thing is the translation. So obviously, like your language would be English Filipino, but it's not as simple as like the language that we speak, but also in like the way that we communicate information that we're giving. So something that we do at Puma Podcast, the reason why we don't do hot mic is yung unedited or barely edited the conversation lang between people, is because we've found that you can have the smartest, the most most decorated expert in the world explaining these concepts to you, but if they cannot explain it in layman's terms, para saan pa, right? Not everybody is going to understand this person with a PhD. So having that post production element is going to be very important in making the language that you're using relatable to other people. So kunwari, nag-invite ako ng specialist ng COVID. Jargon, bacteria, term, right? Sabi niya. What does it mean? So that's something that we take pride on sa Puma podcast, is that the documentary style of the episodes allows us to take what this expert said and reorganize it in a way that makes sense to the ordinary people. And then your host comes in and says, para, kunwari sinabi niya yung government name ng DNA. Ayan, deoxy something, I don't know. I'm an ordinary person. Host comes in, that's DNA. In like the kind, that's the thing that does this, right? You lamanize it. So sa amin, the host's job is basically to translate what expert guests said. And that's really important. However, right, but the translation aspect is super important. That's what helps it be digestible to other people. But another problem that we found with this format is that people are so sanay with the talk show format. So finding that balance of parang kung gusto mo talaga, kung mas relatable talaga sa audience mo na tao sa tao, conversation style, you need to have a host that has done their research or understands the topic well enough na kaya niyang makipagsabayan sa expert and ask the questions that are on the audience's mind potentially. So yun, that's like those are just some of the things that you really need to consider in making things accessible for people. Anong platforms, and like what is the language that you are communicating this information in.
Yeah, I did notice that about your shows at Momo Podcast, because whenever I listen, when you did phrase it that way, I did realize that, oh nga no, that's how you show your in ano, that's why it's so easy to understand for me, because I do learn different things all the time when I listen to your new episodes. And also I remember whenever I was listening to like historical episodes, like history centered episodes, and Siege was also there sometimes, Um ganun nga, it's very approachable nga. So thank you for sharing those insights. And you're absolutely right about laymanize the need to laymanize concepts, because it's less intimidating for people, and it invites people to like ask questions and you know um ask people about it. So okay, sorry for the pause. So, as an advocate nga for women's rights, what key messages or issues would you want women, including those from, like I said, marginalized backgrounds, to be more informed about? So, since we already covered what makes a show accessible, what what certain key messages or topics would you like more women to know about?
Oh my gosh, goodness, do you have all day? Recently we did an episode of A Better Normal. We interviewed the founder of Kindred Health. Kindred Health is a women's health clinic, and the founder's name is Jessica de Mesalim. So Jessica de Mesalim is She has a back, so she's a registered nurse. I don't know, like in the UK yata, but so she's a registered nurse, and then somewhere down the road, she became a tech girly. So she has a background in health, but she also has a background in STEM about tech, ganyan. And their advocacy basically sa Kindred is making health um, easy and accessible, right? She brought up na the reason why Filipinos don't go to the doctor is because it takes up so much time. Sobrang hindi makatao yung may sakit ka na nga, you have to take the whole day off work to be in line the whole day to see your doctor for 10 minutes. Right? That's a day's wages lost. That is transportation money burned up. That, ang takeaway ko basically from what Jess said about um, healthcare and accessibility is that I find that women, especially from marginalized sectors of society, because the health of their family is usually placed in their hands, nagiging responsibilidad nila yun, is parang where they can invest in their health. Avail of those libreng bakuna, avail of those, vitamins and kapag nakaluwag and you have the opportunity to get your vaccines. Right? Parang um hindi mo dapat, like, the message that we should be giving people about health, not just women's health, but health in general, is you shouldn't have to wait to get sick to think about going to the doctor. And if we had a program specifically targeted to women, you know, to lower class women maybe, or mothers, I think that would be a great topic to touch on. Reminding them na prevention is better than a cure. Yeah, I think that's a great message to give people. And like tying into that, like ang dami ko sinabi, tying into that is like knowing their rights, educating them on anong klaseng health policies ba ang dapat hinahanap natin sa mga binoboto natin. Um, because I feel like sometimes that's the last thing on their minds. The vote, when you talk about voters' education, that looking for promises on healthcare is not something that a lot of people think about. So, konektado lahat yan, and dapat um pa like panindigan nila yan para sa sarili nila at para sa pamilya nila.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that because even someone like me who has a stable job and all, I remember during my pregnancy that it took me all day just to get a 10-minute sonogram, ultrasound ganun. But I was thinking, what more for those women, mothers who need checkups, but then they go to like those very crowded government hospitals. Like, what more yung struggles nila, no?
Right.
Na they lose a day's work nga, like you said. And yeah, I think as women, like our whole family's well-being, it really piles up on us that we barely do
Diba? Pero it
anything for
shouldn't.
us. Yeah, it
There are
should.
other adults in your family,
Exactly.
I'm sure. Pero bakit
Exactly.
babae lang ang
It's
nag-aalala ng
always
mga
it's
ganyan?
always the mom. Yeah. And yeah, like I said, I do want someday to have like a women catered show. That's very approachable and informative for Filipino mothers. So picking back up to our last discussion about what key issues or topics would you want uh, to see in a to hear from a women focused radio show, I understand that you have more insights on that or more ideas. So please feel free to let us know about it.
I just suddenly remembered, like, I really wanted to get this in there. that you could probably make an entire season's worth of content on debunking old wives' tales, right? Parang I feel like so many women, we had a very long conversation on how family health is often burdened on the mother or on the women in the family. And even when we know we should know better, a lot of women still resort to old wives' tales that often end up being like a little bit more dangerous than just going to a doctor or like reading a WebMD thing, But I feel like if you were to create this program, right, for women on healthcare, you could have like uh parang pamahiin corner, ganyan. And then you just debunk these things. Anong origin ng pamahiin nito? Like, what does it mean? Ano ang alternative mo? Ganyan. Like, obviously, like, wala akong anak. I'm not responsible for everybody else's health other than mine. So I can't think of any off the top of my head. But like, if you take like an old wives' tale, go into the root of why do people say that this is true and like why this is harmful for you? I feel like that would be super super interesting. Or baka nerd lang talaga ako. I don't know.
No, it's not nerdy at all. I think that didn't actually cross my mind because oh nga the target audience nga natin, they tend to resort to alternative you know
Alternative medicine.
alternative medicine. I would, maybe that's a safe term to say it.
Uh-uh. I
And
think there's also
also
like cultural roots to that.
exactly, because it's
Diba?
so
Parang
deeply rooted in
albularia
our culture.
things.
Mhm,
Yeah.
exactly. It's so deeply rooted in our culture kasi like you alam mo yung ano, those kasabihan na oh, you're gonna get clear skin if you um
Rub your
rub your
first
period
period
on your
blood.
exactly. So I'm
That's
like
bad for you.
not only is that unsanitary, that's very it will make your acne worse, I think. So
Exactly.
but
Yeah, so if
still,
you get like a dermatologist in there to explain why you shouldn't do that,
yeah,
right?
but apparently, some people still do believe that, and I think it's a great idea to have like a pamahiin corner, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that's something that I think it brings a lot of value to the target audience's lives. I'd say
Yeah.
it will prevent more. It will prevent those avoidable medical mishaps or whatever that they're probably subjected to when they believe in these things. So that's a really great idea. So thank you for bringing that up. I think that it would be like a nice little segment, yeah, within the within the show. So knowing what we know now, what do you think is the most important thing that needs to change in the media landscape to better represent and empower women, especially in spaces like radio and podcasting?
I think the most important thing that needs to change is, especially podcasting is easy, right? Because if you wanted to, you just make it, you post it, right? But in spaces, especially in broadcasting, that are still very much governed by, ano ang mabenta. It's men making decisions, right? I think the biggest thing here is to take on the mindset that women shouldn't have to elbow their way in to make space for themselves sa harap. It's finding allies. A lot of people will say like, yeah, yeah, I believe in that women should have voices. But if you're not actively helping make that happen, then right? I hate to tell another person's story. It's definitely more impactful when she says it, but something that the origins of Go Hard Girls is CG used to be a courtside reporter, and then she used to be a sports reporter for a big company, mainstream na company, and she was noticing all these articles na nung nagsisimula na maging popular ang women's volleyball na broadcast. You know, people would write articles on like, can you guess the volleyball by their bikini pic? Ganon. Like, and these are things that that were being posted on big magazines and online publications. Like, they would crop out these women's heads and make you guess sinong athlete to. Or women
That sounds
athletes who,
awful.
it's awful, right? Women
Very
athletes who
awful.
look good even while sweating on the court. Mga ganon. And
Wow.
these are stories being written, approved, and published by men. And when she said, maybe we shouldn't do that, they were like, actually, know your place. Right? Sino ka ba? So,
Disappointing.
and when she wanted to cover, a women's event that wasn't volleyball, they said no one's going to read that. So, people were not. She wasn't. It wasn't just that she had to elbow her way in. People were actively keeping her out, and so it took one man believing in her, offering her, "Hey, you want to make a podcast about sports? We don't want it to be two dudes talking about basketball." It took one person, one man, giving her the chance to do this. And now Go Hard Girls is 5 years old. It's been recognized at the SOPA Awards. It's been recognized at like an International Women's Podcasting Awards. And it started with a crowdfunding campaign. It's somebody gave Siege a chance to do Go Hard Girls. And then people invested in it. One of the biggest funders of Go Hard Girls was a sports lawyer, a male sports lawyer. Drop of a hat, ang dami niyang binigay. Tapos na yung crowdfunding kami, nabuo na yung goal. Because nobody thought, ang baba ng goal. Kaya pala ng isang tao na bayaran to eh. Um, I feel like when women are constantly put in a position where they're being told na you're not going to amount to anything or dream smaller, they will, right? Yung suntok natin sa buwan, mababa lang kasi sinasabihan tayo lagi na hindi natin kayang abutin. But something that we've learned in Go Hard Girls through the athletes, the stories of the athletes that we're telling, and through our own community, is that it really takes a community to to get you places. You shouldn't have to elbow your way in um, to occupy space. People should, I mean, they should make space for you, give you a chance to prove
Yeah.
that you deserve that space.
Yeah, it's thanks for sharing that kasi it's so shocking this, this origin story of Go Hard Girls, but also really remarkable na it just goes to show yung power of having allies nga, as you said, because we can't pull resources out of thin air. We need as much as I hate to say it, we sometimes do need men's help to if nobody's really listening to us, we need someone to represent
Yeah.
us in that way. It's frustrating, but it really is how it is, sadly, here. And also, you know ngayon we're just talking about the struggles of women in sports, but what more the struggles of real other women who, ordinary women who are boxed up into one category, being pressured to stay at home, being pressured to,
Right.
just get married, have more kids and all that stuff, and
It,
know your place.
parang,
Yeah. And imagine all the
like,
violence and all the
exactly.
sexism that comes with it that we don't often see or talk about, right?
So I wanted to touch on that because you mentioned nga na parang there's so many types of women in the world, right? There's so many types of women in the world, and sometimes it's hard. Obviously it's hard to cover everyone, right? And we're only talking about the struggles of Filipina athletes. What more para athletes, Paralympian athletes who Filipino athletes get paid dirt in the first place. What more if you're a disabled athlete trying to make it in
Yes.
the world, right?
Yeah, right.
Um, Tapos mga athletes who decide to be moms. And then suddenly like, oh, you're not worth anything anymore. Hindi ka na magaling kasi may anak ka na. You have something else occupying space in your mind. And then like yung mga when women don't fit into a certain category of look, suddenly they're less valuable. Parang people love, the general population, they love women's volleyball, right? Kasi marami sa kanila pretty, tangkad, payat, long hair, ganyan. And then here, like, and then, like, I'm not, obviously, I'm not comparing the two, right?
Yeah,
But then, like,
yeah.
you have the Gilas Filipinas women who are bringing home more medals at the SEA Games than the men, but nobody pays attention to them kasi mga boyish. Batok sila. Right? Parang, I want to share with you like this thing that we made. This is a sticker that we're giving out at we're distributing at Go Hard Girls. It says strong is beautiful. And I feel like we were very intentional about how we designed this. Now we wanted to feature, women of all shapes and sizes. We were very intentional about having, an amputee, about having a hijabi, about having, a plus size woman on this sticker because we want to acknowledge that your strength comes in every shape and form and every iteration that it comes in is equally as beautiful as you know anything else you might encounter. So parang make space for all types of women, not just some women, all types of women. Kung sino pa yan, their experiences should, your experience and their experience, they might be different, but they're all kind of tied to the same thing.
You're
So, yeah,
absolutely right.
we're looking for allies.
Yeah.
We're looking for allies who are accepting of how wide the variety of women
Yeah,
is.
women shouldn't have to fit a certain mold or standard just for them to get attention or be heard, And
And that's
oh,
something that needs to be
yeah,
communicated to women as well.
yeah.
'Di ba? Parang sa
And
Pilipinas.
and I also
Ay, ang taba
realized,
mo na.
oh,
Ganyan, di
yeah,
ba? Ay,
right.
ganyan. Tanda mo na. Ganyan. I think women also need to be more accepting of that that thing that women are varied.
Yeah, and also you know, we're free to talk. We know these things because I guess we're privileged enough to
Yeah.
be able to talk about these things. But then, people, modern Filipinas and all that are, usually privileged like us. Parang we're the ones who kind of talk in like a sort of echo chamber thing. But then in
Yes.
reality, a lot of women, marginalized women, unintentionally,
Get
they
excluded from
they
that
get
conversation.
excluded, and also siguro influenced by, their upbringing or the environment they're in. They unintentionally, you know, apply the same parang sexist beliefs or backwards
What's it
beliefs.
called?
Yeah, I don't know how
Internalized misogyny.
exactly. Yeah,
That's the
internalized.
term. They have like
Yeah,
their internalized misogyny. They don't
yeah,
realize that they're doing it because it's so ingrained in culture. It's
exactly.
ingrained in, the way that you're raised, the people
Parang
that you
submit
surround
yourself
yourselves
to
with.
your husband, all that stuff. Parang your
Mm-mm.
worth lies in being a
Yung
mom.
comparing yourself to other women, mga
Yeah.
ganyan. Parang
And you're better
that's
if you're thinner, ganun.
yeah, ganyan.
Ganun.
Yung mga apart from men being able, men should be willing to open themselves up to learn. Women also should be able to learn from other women and even men as well, and other, gender as a spectrum.
Yeah, I know na once we get, more women to be able to discuss this, to be able to discuss this at home safely, I hope.
Yeah,
Parang,
it always starts at home, conversations like that.
yeah, parang the ripple effect to that sa men in the family, even, their young kids, their teenage sons and all that stuff. Parang they, once we get these healthy conversations going, these men become advocates for women, yeah, become
Yeah,
advocates for
it
their
takes a
sisters, their moms.
long
It is. It's an
time.
in
It
an
takes a
ideal
long time.
world. In an ideal world, ganun. But the Philippines has a long way to go, especially since it's really a matter of you know yeah since I am studying devcom, parang it's the use nga of communication strategies and tools to achieve a certain development goal in the least amount of time possible. So, the primary goal naman is to alleviate poverty, but at the same time, there's a lot of other things that we can work on, 'di ba?
Yeah, and
Discuss with, yeah.
I'm of the belief that poverty is not just a financial,
Yes, exactly.
right? Um, education,
Yeah, yeah. Women's health,
acknowledging your
especially.
rights, health, ganyan.
Yeah,
Um, there are lots of ways to fight poverty, but I feel like it's also about it starts for me at least, it starts with empowering
exactly.
the people. You know, they don't realize that this is something that could help them, find work, or help them get out of sticky situations in their households, ganyan. So it's very
Yeah.
important to
And
open
what
up these
more Yeah,
conversations
and
for
what more
people.
if women knew more of their rights, that they can easily walk away from these situations, or they could easily access these types of help, these programs, and these
Yes.
government benefits. What more if they knew more about that? So, that's a dream for, this radio show
Oh my
that I've been
gosh. You know what? Like,
conceptualizing.
not to flex the merch, but like this is
Yeah.
so perfect. I wanted to say in the
I'm
first.
very excited for the merch.
It's I something that we say a lot at Go Hard Girls is parang to add you need to advocate for yourself and you need to advocate for others. And so having a women-led, audio program, whether that's a podcast or a radio show to empower other women, that's very empowered women, empower
Is that
women.
a
So
purse?
it's a pouch.
I love it. I can't wait to use it.
Yeah, so parang when you empower women for their personal benefit, it empowers them to hold the door open for other women as well. And I feel
Right.
like yun yung pinaka mahalaga. It's advocate for yourself and be an ally to others.
Yeah, and I think by nature, I think women are very, may camaraderie talaga. May
Yeah.
natural biological camaraderie among women. And you're absolutely right. Now, once you wake up from these things, and you feel a bit more empowered, parang it's natural na instinct mo is to empower others as well who are in similar situations, 'di ba? So, yeah, that's a really that's an ideally sana there's more opportunities to talk about these with women from marginalized sectors, from mga nasa rural, and all these places that usually these conversations aren't being held in, since we're both chronically online. We have the privilege to
We're
talk about
chronically
these
online in
things,
a
yeah,
productive
in
way.
a
Just
productive
to be
way, yeah.
clear, mga classmates
Yeah.
dyan.
Yeah. So, but then, yeah, I think now that we now that we've talked about these hopes and dreams that we have for women, and all these things that radio and media can do. Looking ahead, what are some of the projects or causes that you're most excited to work on, and how do you hope to continue making an impact through your work?
Um, so like something that we're doing at Go Hard Girls right now. It's called the Go Hard Girls Grants. Empowered by the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. We've offered 10 slots to storytellers who want to hone their craft and write a podcast episode about their athlete of choice. We've told a lot of sports stories on Go Hard Girls. It's a lot of basketball, football, jujitsu, maraming jujitsu. Really excited to spotlight different sports in the Philippines. We have. Did you know that we have a speed skating team?
I didn't know
We
that.
'Di ba? Parang like a lot of people don't know that we have an
Yeah.
ice hockey team, much less a women's
Yeah,
ice
I
hockey
never
team,
knew
right?
that. Tropical country and
So
whatnot.
we've done an episode on the national women's ice hockey team, but this time around, one of our grantees is doing an episode on a speed skater. That's super cool. I'm really looking forward to the episodes that our grantees are coming up with. But for Puma podcast in general, we have this wonderful partnership with the Ramon Magsaysay Awards Foundation. So the Ramon Magsaysay Awards is basically the Nobel Prize for Southeast Asians,
Yeah.
who are doing a lot of development work in and around Asia. And we had the first season earlier this year about this past year's Ramon Magsaysay awardees. And then this year we're expanding the partnership to look deeper. We're featuring more Southeast Asian excellence. We are looking into history. We are looking into art. And for me, as like a nerd, right? I'm super like cultural nerd. It's super exciting to be working on stories that not a lot of people have heard of. I've certainly never heard of these, but I'm super excited to be working on projects like that na highlight Filipino excellence, Southeast Asian excellence, especially towards people who are doing good for the community. So that's me. We do a lot of advocacy work on Pomo Podcast. Um, we have, oh my God, plug lang ako ng plug kasi like that's my job.
Yeah,
Promo
feel
girl.
free.
We have an ongoing partnership on our show, A Better Normal. It's a podcast about creative entrepreneurship and innovation with the World Wildlife Fund and another one with Forest Foundation. So we're doing more stories about sustainability, about replenishing natural resources. Did you know there's more to mangrove planting than meets the eye, right? So we're sitting down with a lot of young conservationists. I think young is a very important word to share here. Is that expertise on the topic has really parang it's not relegated to old people na lang. You see how much young people care about the world around them, and I think that's really exciting
Yeah, I
to
do
show
agree.
that young
Mhm.
people, if
Yeah.
I'm 30, this person's like 25 years old, doesn't have yun ang nagawa, and imbis na mainggit, 'di ba? Gayahin mo na lang. Do some
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's amazing how, you highlight the word young people here, young women here, not just in sports but also in, nature conservation and all that stuff. Also, did you know that share ko lang, did you know that right now, like I think the young, the top pistol shooter right now is actually a teenage or a college girl from Ateneo right now.
Yes!
Yeah, she's number
Yeah!
one now,
That's
and they took
super
home.
cool.
Yeah, and so if we if we just give these girls, these women, a voice, a chance to be seen, a chance to be appreciated by more people, I think inevitably it can inspire a whole other generation of women, like the generation after us, and like little girls and all that stuff. And also, you know i guess when I guess when other young girls from from more underprivileged backgrounds, when they hear these stories, of women overcoming the system and all, I think inevitably it we can have more Nesty Petecios, no more
Ira
Heidi. Yes,
Villegas,
not just in sports, but
more
in any
Heidelins,
other field.
especially when
Yeah.
you look at our female Olympic medalists are they're
They came
women
from
in male
yeah.
dominated sports.
Yeah, and
Um
they didn't come
and
from money either, right?
yeah, exactly. And like that showing telling these stories, this is why para sa akin, like, storytelling is one of the most important things in the world, and never, never, never dapat mawala ang honest, factual storytelling. I wanted to make that clear.
Absolutely.
Like, factual and
Absolutely.
honest and true
Yes.
storytelling is the one of the most important things that we need to protect in this world. Whether it's about women or history, environment, ganyan. Napakahalaga talaga kasi it's really what shapes a generation.
Yeah. You know, I really learned a lot from you, and I really had fun talking about this topic. And I really hope that, the next generation of Filipinas, next generation of, even internet feminists, let's just call it that. I hope
Even young boys.
even young boys, I hope that, um, you know, will and the condition of women all over the Philippines will continue to, get better. And, um, you know, I hope that we will, all of them, we will all be heard, seen, and also be given the chance to, um, get out of, easily opt out of situations that we shouldn't be in, that they shouldn't be in. And ultimately, I hope that, radio, TV, movies can represent us, represent them, because, at the end of the day, it's women who create this nation, I mean, you can't have like you can't have all these amazing people without, without women, you know. Does that make sense?
Of course it does. To
Yeah.
me it does.
Okay, anyway, thank you so much, Ella. Do you have anything else to share, or do you have any, and ending messages for our
No. Um. Thank you for the opportunity to yap about things that I'm passionate about.
productive yapping?
Productive yapping. Thank you for giving me the space to do that, and I hope that people appreciate the things that I've talked about today.
The parallelism,
Pwedeng
of course.
mag-plug?
Yeah.
Pwedeng plug? Pwede bang mag-ano?
Of course, of course.
Yeah, check out Mo Podcast. We're on all your podcast apps. We specialize in journalism, but we also tell a lot of stories about women empowerment, about sustainability, creative entrepreneurship, innovation, and so many other things. We prioritize. We really put a premium on um, telling the truth, doing our research, and for us, no matter what your perspective is on life, mabuting makinig.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, and hope to see you soon.
Bye!
Bye.